Okay, guys. So last discussion that we had was Article 211-A, Qualified Bribery. Okay, now we will move on to Article 212. Hello, good afternoon. Corruption of public officials. So guys, who is the one liable sa crime ng corruption of public officials? I will make a scenario, okay? Si A, ginbayran niya ang policeman nga si B. Policeman B, siya ang officer of the day sa police station sa mga na-detain bala nga prisoners. Hambal ni A, bayran ta kasong 50,000. Ipalayaon mo lang si C. Okay, si C ang prisoner. So si B naman niya nagpati siya sa ginambal ni A. So nagpabayad siya para makalaya si C. Okay? So si A, ano yung crime na gin-commit? Si A ang nagbayad. Anyone for plus points?
Corruption of public officials, ma'am.
Sino to?
Yes, ma'am. Pwede mo masalat question, ma'am.
Corruption, ma'am.
Yes, Jess. Ano ganyan section to, Jess?
Corruption of public officials, ma'am.
Okay, yes. Okay, very good, Jess. Okay, liwatan ko scenario, ha? Si A, ginbayaran niya si B para nga pagwaon sa prisuhan si C. Okay? Si B public official, siyang jail warden. Okay? So ginbayaran niya si A, ginbayaran niya si B. Okay? So si B nagbaton sa kwarta. Ano ang crime naman nga na-commit ni B? Agina ang sabat ni Jessa is corruption. Ang gin-commit ni A na siya, no? Corruption of public official. Ano naman yung gin-commit na crime ni B?
Bribery, ma'am.
Yes, Ann. Correct. Okay? Ano section mo, Ann?
Oo, ma'am. D, ma'am.
D. Oo. So, bale, kung sino ang nagabayad, ang crime na ginakomit niya is corruption of public officials. Kung sino naman niya ang nagabaton ng public officer, ang crime na nakomit niya is bribery. So, that's the difference between the two. So, do not confuse nga. Like, for example, ginbayaran ko ang isa ka public official para obrahon niyang gusto kong obrahon niya. Like, for example, i-forge niyang documents or PKO niyang documents, or something within his official function nga labag sa batas. So if you are the one paying, the crime that you're committing is not bribery. This is the misnomer man actually ay hindi bribery na. Diba? Nga ay halagin bribe niya to. Gali ang yang commit niya nga crime is corruption of public officials. The crime committed by the public official is bribery. Okay? Sige. So, corruption of public officials. The offender here makes an offer. Pwedeng offer pa lang. Promises or gives or presents to a public officer. That offer or promise are made or the gifts that are presented are given to the public officer under circumstances that will make the public officer liable for direct bribery or indirect bribery. So, nagatandem ni siya, guys. Kung wala sang bribery, wala sang corruption of public official. So, the public officer may also be liable under the Anti-GRAFT and Corrupt Practices Act or Republic Act 3019. Okay? A public officer is ano paghambal sa nga public officer, ano na siya? A public officer is an elective, pwede nga ginboto nyo siya, or appointive official. When we say appointive, gin-appoint sa mga position. Like elective officials naton, can you give an example? For example, sa local government, sinong elective official? Yes, Rods? Give an example of an elective official. Anyone? Gin-elect ba lang official? Kung kung mag-eleksyon, sino yung mga ginaboto? Ano mga position?
Mayors, ma'am. Mayors, mayor, ma'am. Councilors, ma'am.
Yes, Nick. Nika, si Rods. Okay. Yes, councilors, mayors, they are elective officials. Appointive officials, on the other hand, ang mga gina-appoint sa posisyon like department secretaries, mga kung sa local level, mga treasurer, mga accountant, registrar, wala siya. They're appointive officials or employees. So they may be permanent or temporary. Basta official. They may be held liable sa Anti-GRAFT and Corrupt Practices Act. Dapat there must be an undue injury. Dapat may injury nga or actual damage caused to the offended party. I will not discuss further na lang sang Anti-GRAFT and Corrupt Practices Act kaya na siya special law. So let's move on to also plunder, guys. That's some crime na makommit sa public officer. Okay? Article 213. Frauds against public treasury and similar offenses. Okay, fraud against public treasury. Illegal exactions. Paragraph 2. Fraud against public treasury. That the offender is a public officer and that he should have taken his advantage of his office. That is, he intervened in a transaction of his official capacity. So like for example, that he entered into an agreement with any interested party or speculator or made use of any other scheme with regard to furnishing supplies, mga procurement, making of contracts, adjustment or settlement of accounts relating to public property or funds, and that accused of the intent to defraud the government. So actually, ang bottom line man lang dire is gingamit mo yung position to enter into contracts, to buy supplies, nga your purpose is to defraud the government. So this mainly is about procurement. Elements of illegal exaction. Paragraph 2 of Article 213. Exaction. The offender is a public officer entrusted with the collection of taxes, licenses, fees, or other imposts. So, ang mga nag-collect ng taxes, those who are in the BIR or those who are with the treasurer's office sa local government. Licenses, also BPLO, licensing office kung sa mga businesses, fees and other imposts. So, ang mga nagapanukot is guilty of the following acts: demanding directly or indirectly the payment of sums different from or larger than those authorized by law. So kung like for example, sa treasurer's office ka, nag-ground up. Sa treasurer's office ka nag-obra, tapos gin-assess mo ang isa ka person sang taxes, that tax nga gin-assess mo is so much mas dako kesa sa dapat niya nga bayaran. So you are liable of illegal exaction. Also, failing voluntarily to issue receipt. So dapat kung sa government ka, if someone pays you money for an official transaction, like for example, mabayad sa tax, mabayad sa mga mabayad sa sang kay ma-request sa sang document halin sa government, dapat ma-issue ka gid sang receipt. So hindi gid kamo guys magpasugot nga wala sang receipt. So kung mag-fail ka voluntarily, if you're an official or an employee of the government and you fail to issue receipt as provided by law, for the sum of money that you collected officially, then you will be liable for illegal exaction. Also, if you collect or receive directly or indirectly by way of payment or otherwise things or objects of nature different from that provided by law. So like for example, ang ginapangayosi mo by law is dapat ma-receive mo ang payment nga cash. So kung hindi cash ang ginbayad sa imo, kaginbaton mo, like for example, cheque ang ginbayad sa imo, kaginbaton mo, then that is receiving something nga of a nature different from that provided by law. Or di man gani, kung like for example, dapat kwarta ginang imong i-tender sa government. Tapos bayaran kaya like for example, sang goods, sang bugas, o kung sang dilata, and then you receive it as payment for the obligation sang sa katao. Syempre do hindi man na siya sa pwede. Okay? So it must be of similar nature kaya sa gina-require sa law. If you collect something different from that provided for by law, then you are liable for illegal exaction. So that's the three ways that you can commit illegal exaction. Here, the offender must be the collecting public officer. So dapat gintugyan siya nga mag-collect sang taxes, licenses, fees, or other imposts. So kung niya yung function, like for example, is to market watchman siya, okay, hindi man niya ubra ang mag-collect sang taxes, di ba? Or licenses or imposts, then hindi siya maging liable sa amo ni nga crime nga illegal exaction. But he will be held liable for other crimes. Like for example, if ginhatag to siya sang gin-collect niya to, then solicitation ang iya nga crime. Here, illustration, may cashier sa City Treasurer's Office, nagkadusubong si X. Si X, makuha siya sa sedula. Diba, dira ka na nagagawad sa sedula sa Treasurer's Office. Tapos, ginmangkot niya si Treasurer, hama niya, pila dapat ko nga bayaran. Tapos, sambal ni isang cashier sa Treasurer's Office, 200 pesos. Pero 20 pesos lang yun man actually ang sedula. So, ang crime nga kin-commit ni collecting officer? He committed the crime of illegal exaction. What if wala nagpasugot si X? Nga ba si X nga ay kamahal gali, hindi na lang ako magkuha, naglakat sa dayon. So, will the collecting officer still be liable for illegal exaction? Nga ba si nag-walk away na si X. Hindi na siya magbalik. Hindi na ako mag-asa nga magbalik si X.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, he will still be liable for the crime of illegal exaction. Kay merely ang pag-collect niya sang money different from that.
Enough to constitute the crime.
Yes, correct. Yes, kasono. Correct. So, just the act of demanding makes him liable for illegal exaction. Demand ka lang. Other frauds. Article 213, other frauds. Offender is a public officer, nag-take advantage sa siya official position, and then he commits any fraud or deceit enumerated sa Article 315 to 318. Swindling or estafa, prohibited transactions. I will not delve deeper na dire. Possession of prohibited interest by a public officer. So, dapat kung public officer ka, dapat wala ka interest in any contract sa nga nagaano sa imo nga official duty. Okay? So like for example, your position like for example, ang iyong position nagaano sa imo nga to issue permit sa isa ka business. So dapat you are not kumbaga hindi wala ka sa monetary interest sa amo na. Kung ikaw gid ang approving nga person nga iga-approve gid lang for example sa mga permits. So dapat wala ka man sang interest sa na naga-apply, okay? So hindi ka investor and so on and so forth. Chapter 4, malversation of public funds or property. Malversation. Article 217. Offender is a public officer or employee may custody or control of funds or property by reason of his duties of his office. Okay, those funds or property were public funds or property for which he was accountable. And then he appropriated, took, misappropriated, or consented, or through abandonment or negligence permitted another person to take them. So, sino? Dapat accountable officer ka. So, you are an offender if you are an accountable officer. Like for example, cashier ka sa treasurer's office. Or cashier ka sa treasurer's office ng isang school, di ba? PCC is a public school, correct? So, connected siya sa government. Sweldo sa employees are from the government. And then, ang cashier, for example, sa PCC, ay hindi na lang. So, isa na lang ka-public school, okay? Ang cashier sa public school nagbaton siya kwarta. Gari kay manugpuli na siya, nasiradhan niya ng kaha. Yung puli niya kwarta. Tapos may nangutang sa iya, tikulang niya kwarta, ginpautang niya itong ginpuli niya nga bayad tani sa eskwelahan. Nagbayad ko na si Jessa, nagbayad si Jessa sa tuition. Kaya nagpapuli na manugpuli na gid siya, wala na niya nabutang sa kaha, pagpuli niya sa balay na pangutang niya ang kwarta. So liable siya sa malversation. Ginbayran niya man pagkasunod nga si Mana. Balik niya man?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, Sheila. Yes. Regardless, biskan yan bayran mo pagkasunod nga si Mana, that is a public fund. So dapat way mo siya ginpuli, way mo siya ginpahulam, biskan islan mo pa siya. So you are liable for malversation. Malversation of public fund. What if property, like for example, laptop sang office, or di man cellphone sang office, may cellphone ng office, telepono sang office, di kay tamad kaya magkado sa opisina, ginala niya sa balay niyo. Anything as little as chair, guys, that is a public property also. Biskan pulungkuan lang na, biskan dapat you should not if you become a public officer someday, then you should know that you should not take that from where it should be, nga ihalin mo siya sa isa ka lugar, like more so kung sa balay mo siya ginilala or ginpulik mo siya, because that will constitute malversation. So the COA auditor appeared. Hari isa ka example. Si COA auditor nga naan sila ni gaya ga check kung ano mo, kung Sila nagapangalaga, kumbaga, sang asset, sang state by checking if if the public funds are used in a proper manner. Okay? Si COA auditor, nag-ato siya, nag-inspect sila. Tapos, nag-conduct sila sang audit, nakita nila nga niya nga kulang ang kwarta. So, ang kukulang ang kwarta, kung ikaw ang accountable officer, presumption na nga kay kulang ang kwarta, ginkuha mo. Okay? So, naku man gani nga risgo ang pagiging cashier, di ba? Kaya kung kulang na dira, ang presumption is ikaw nagkuha because you're the one accountable for the public fund. So, kung may shortage or may deficiency, kag hindi niya mabalik, may presumption nga you're the one who took it. Nari, maybe you can relate to this. May isa ka lalaki, he is walking in the middle of the night. And then in-approach siya sang isa ka public officer who was conducting a patrol. Okay, nagapatrol ang isa ka public officer. He saw something and naga-bulge waist sang isa ka sang man nga so gin-stop niya. 'Di ba? One of man stop and frisk. Pwede nyo i-stop and i-frisk ang isa ka person kung makita nyo nga daw makaduguluda siya, kung may probable cause ka mo na may dala siya nga illegal nga weapon. And then the police officer stopped that man and he asked for the license of the gun. If you're a gun owner, you should have a license to possess, di ba? So, ang lalaki nga to, he cannot produce the license for the said firearm. So, he was arrested for illegal possession of unlicensed firearm. Tapos, confiscate. Then, during the trial, ang hambal sa prosecutor, sa custodian, idalon ng firearm sa court. Okay? But the custodian already sold the firearm confiscated. So what crime is committed by the said custodian? Is liable for malversation under Article 217.
Malversation, ma'am.
Okay.
Malversation, ma'am.
Malversation.
Okay. Yes. So he's liable for malversation.
Malversation, ma'am.
Hambal niya, nag-explain si policeman, hambal niya, it cannot be malversation because the firearm was owned by a private person. Hindi man siya yan nagapangawat sa government. Is he correct? Havan?
Confiscate naman, ma'am. So,
Okay.
you can so na sa siya sa your accountable officer render accounts, ma'am.
Bakit na turn over, ma'am, yung firearm?
Okay, yes. Sakto si Anne. Confiscated na siya. So if it is confiscated by a public authority, it is already in his custody. So anything that is in the custody of a public person or a public officer assumes the character of public property. So it becomes a public property if it is confiscated already. So the crime committed is malversation because na siya sa isa ka public officer. It is already a public property and it was malversed. Siya sa isa ka public officer. Okay, very good. Article 218, failure of accountable officer to render accounts. This is the crime naman kung like for example, hindi maka-explain ang taong, like for example, a cashier, hindi niya ma-explain kung man wala gatali ang iyang collection, ang mga sa receipts niya and the collection ng the money that she or he collected. Okay? So kung hindi niya ma-explain, this is the crime that he or she has committed. Failure of accountable officer to render accounts. Also, if you are a public officer and you have and you are an accountable officer of public funds or property, you cannot go outside of the country without permission. Okay? So if or to render it before leaving the country. So hindi ka pwede ka abroad kung wala mo na render ang iyong mga account before you go. So, hindi ka ka-abroad kung wala mo na tali ang iyong mga funds. If you fail to do that, you become liable of the crime under Article 219. Failure of a responsible public officer to render accounts before leaving the country.
For living.
Yes. Also, Article 220, illegal use of public funds or property. So, wala mo man siya gin-use for your personal gain. Okay? Ang public funds or property, wala mo man siya gin-use for your personal gain. What you did is, you apply the same for public use other than that nga iya nga purpose. Like for example, chair. Ang chair nga mga monoblocks na pala. Ang mga monoblocks, yun na order na siya sa government for the purpose nga gamiton siya sa function hall. Sa sulod sa isa ka, for example, sa barangay. Okay? Gingamit siya para sa barangay. Okay? So, ang ginubraya sa isa ka barangay official, kay may pista dito sa tiyak na barangay, yung pahulam niyang chair. That's also for public purpose. Diba? Why hindi man for private purpose? But then, that property belongs to this barangay. So, even though the purpose is also public, yung pahulam niya lang because pista, technical malversation siya. So that's also a form of malversation. May ara isang specific purpose. That specific purpose must be by law or by ordinance. Kung sa barangay na mag-procure ka muna may purpose ilan. Okay? He is liable for technical malversation. For example, an officer has under his administration public funds which is for a certain project. Let's say, si ex-city administrator siya. Under his administration, may 500,000 nga money. Ang purpose ng 500,000 was for the construction of a bridge. Okay, between one barangay to another barangay. Suddenly, may bagyo. A big typhoon rendered many of the constituents homeless. So what he did was, kinanglan, sa mga evacuees, sang food, clothing, water, kag mga basic needs. So ginubra sa city administrator, ginamit yung 500,000 para sa pagkaon, bulong sa mga constituents niya. So, is the public officer liable of any crime? Is liable of technical malversation. Okay? 221.
Technical malversation.
Failure to make delivery of public funds or property. The public officer has government funds in his possession, okay? And he is under the obligation to make payments for such funds. That he fails to make payment maliciously, punishable acts here is failing to make payment by a public officer who is under obligation to make such payment from government funds in his possession. Self-explanatory man guys. Sa title pa lang, failure to make delivery of public funds. Bali may dapat sa bayaran from the funds of the government. Probably kurente sa government. dapat bayaran sa government ang nila kuryente. And then they failed to deliver the public funds where it must be paid or it must be rendered. Officers included in preceding provisions, private individual who may be liable of 217, 22, and 221. Okay? Ang private individuals can be held liable man sa mga crimes under this title. Dali lang. May nag-miss call sa akin. Anyway, sige. Let's move on. Infidelity of the custody of prisoners. Infidelity in the custody of prisoners. Conniving with or consenting to evasion. Ari, dapat offender is a public officer. He has or is in custody or charge of prisoner, either detention prisoner by final judgment. Such prisoner must escape from his custody, and he was in connivance with the prisoner in the latter's escape or with his consent. Sa Article 224 naman, guys, if sa example, mo gali kagina, sa example, kung gali kagina, kung ginpalaya mo, kung ikaw gid ang in custody sina, ang imo crime na na-commit is infidelity o in the custody of prisoners. Or like for example, isa ka lang niya sa mga police pero hindi imo duty or hindi ikaw ang custodian, then you are liable of bribery. Kung ikaw ang custodian, you're liable of infidelity in the custody of prisoners. Kung nakalaya naman niya ang prisoner, kay nag-syunga-syunga kaya abi, wala mo sa ginpusasan. Tapos mahambal ang prisoner nga mihi ko anay, tingin pa ihi mo man lang siya tuya sa mga kilid, wala mo man siya ginupdan. Then you are liable of article of the crime under Article 224, evasion through negligence. So gipatakas mo ang prisoner through your negligence. Wala mo man tani ginhungod galing kay nakatakas because you were negligent. For example, may ginatawag kita ng citizen's arrest, right? Kung like, ginbuligan ka, isang isa ka public person, isang isa ka private person nga magdakop. That's citizen's arrest. And then, the person nga nagbulig, siya custody ang prisoner, himbayan mo siya custody, and then, nakatakas. So the crime committed here is escape of prisoner under the custody of a person, not a public officer. So the offender here is no longer a public officer but a private individual. Baligin tugyan sa imo. Like for example, ma-CR si police, tapos ginamba niya si mo, uy, bantayin niya na yung police ni. So you are doon natagan ka sa public function. And then if the prisoner escapes, the private individual may be held liable under this Article 225. Officer breaking seal, offender here is a public officer. Yan, 226. 226 guys is removal, concealment, or destruction of document. Self-explanatory, title pa lang muna na siya. Damage here is necessary in order to give rise to infidelity in the custody of documents. So if you are in charge of the documents, you must take care of that document, because if those documents that are in your custody are seriously damaged, then you are held liable sa mga offense. Breaking seal. He is in charge with the custody of papers or property. This papers or property are sealed by proper authority, and then you break the seal or permit them to be broken. So, kung is, like for example, a letter addressed to the city mayor, dapat sa city mayor lang sila ma-open, or di man, mangkot ka na siya, tawag ka siya, mayor, pwede ko nibuksan ang money, you have a document here. And then if you open that without his permission, then you will be breaking seal. But the papers must be sealed by proper authority. Okay? Hindi lang simple letter lang siya by any person. Dapat it must be of official correspondence man. Ibig sabihin, babaya naman pala may public, ano man siya, may public correspondence. Like for example, LGU to LGU, or like the province to LGU. Opening a closed document. Also this, guys, dapat kung ang document is closed, it should be opened by the person nga nakabutang kung kay sino gid na address ang document. Because mere opening of the document is already a crime under this article. Revelation of secrets by an officer. By revealing any secrets which affect public interest learned by him in his official capacity. So dapat, kung ginhatagan ka man sang pribilehiyo nga makabalo sa mga strategies, like for example, sa government, tapos dapat hindi ka, if that's a secret that will affect public interest, you should keep your mouth shut. Also, guys, kung magsala ka, mag-deliver sa papers, that's also a crime under this article, revelation of secrets by an officer. Public officer revealing secrets of private individual is also a crime. So, my public officer, he knows the secret of this private individual by reason of his office, and then he reveals such secret without authority or justifiable reason. Damo sa mga secrets. Open disobedience. Offender is a judicial or executive officer. Sa court, judicial, or executive officer sa executive branch of the government. Judicial, sa court. Okay? May judgment, may decision, or may orders of superior authority, and then you disobeyed such order, decision, or judgment without legal justification. So, open disobedience ang imong commit. Article 231. For example, what if is in this case Duterte, the sheriff, hindi si Duterte, president. The sheriff wishes to execute a writ of execution and cause the squatters to leave the place because of the execution issued by the court. So, di ba kung squatters area, kamo ginapailig kamo da. And then, like for example, may court decision na nga dapat maghalindi makamudra kay nabawi na sang tag-iyang lupa. And then, the sheriff did not perform, dapat i-deliver niya na sa mga squatters nga siya ma-execute kumbaga sang judgment, so sang decision sa court. And then, he did not perform his function. Then, he is liable of open disobedience. Also, disobedience to order of superior officer when the said order was suspended by the inferior officer. Gin-suspend ka pero hindi ka mag-suspend. refusal of assistance. If you're a public officer and you are capable man to or competent to perform or to lend your hand in the administration of justice and other public service, you should do so, because if you fail or refuse to give an assistance, you will be held liable under this article 233, refusal of assistance. So police officer, yung tawag ka, hamal mo, sir, may makawat, o, di ba? Tapos may kayo nagbuling, nagtanga ka lang, nahadlo kayo gali sa makawat kay may may baril siya, kung may so ay mo ginubra, imbis na magdalagan nga ginlagas mo makawat, nagdalagan ko on the opposite direction. Then you will be held liable sa refusal of assistance. Example there, guys. If you will read if you will watch the video, I will pause the illustration for a minute so that you can properly read it. And you can also pause the video. Medyo masakit abi akong tutulan. Ang illustration niya is about medical legal officers. If they are called sa court to testify, because like for example in the case of rape, a medical legal officer must testify in court. So that is his public duty. So if he refuses to testify in court, he may be held liable. Refusal of assistance. He failed to cooperate. Refuses to discharge elective office. Kung ikaw ang na-elect, dapat pupuan mo posisyon, elect ka dira. But if you refuse to be sworn in or to discharge of your duty, wala ka man proper reason to refuse, nagpa-elect ka pa, diba? So you will be held liable sa mga crime. Also, maltreatment of prisoners. So guys, you be careful with this, ha. As although sometimes may mga prisoners kin man na nag-attest sa ating patients, but then there is still mga tao man sila, and hindi na sila pwede bakulon para mag-ako or in any way maltreat them, like hindi nyo sila pagpakanon or any other form of maltreatment. That should not be the case, okay? Like for example, lubaan nyo sila para mahuyan sila. That is a crime. Also, guys, you may be held liable under a special law, Anti-Torture Act, RA 9745. Sometimes also, duwa ka crime ang ina-charge sa imo, maltreatment and also physical injuries. So depending on the gravity of the injuries, like pwede nga slight, pwede nga serious physical injury if you probably lose your eyesight or your face becomes deformed if you are the maltreated officer, maltreated prisoner, and then pwede mo siya kasuhan separate cases, public officer. Anticipation of duties of public office. This is part of your guys. Wala ka pa na sworn into office, nag-exercise ka na sa imo function. So you're committing anticipation of duties. 237, also part of your exercise, prolonging performance of duties and powers. So wala ka na sa posisyon, nag-occupy ka ng gyapon sa posisyon. 238, abandonment of office or position. Nag-formally resign ka pero wala pa na accept mo resignation. Di ba two-way man na, kung mag-apply ka gani ubra, di ba mag-apply ka, dapat i-accept ka na bago ka mag-start work. So same also with resignation, dapat i-accept pa rin resignation before you abandon your office. So if you abandon your office without the acceptance, you are committing a crime of abandonment or office of or position. Usurpation of legislative powers. It can only be committed by an executive or judicial officer. Diba? Meron kita sa 3 branches of government. Legislative, executive, and judicial. So dapat your duties are bound naman sa
And judiciary.
Yes. So dapat naka-confine lang dira imong duties. So if you attempt to repeal a law, like for example, mayor ka lang tapos ang balon mo nga i-change ko ng ordinance gani, then you are usurping a legislative power because a mayor belongs to the executive branch of the government. He is not he does not possess legislative power. Although he can have a say, like for example, i-propose niya sa sanggunian, for instance. Usurpation of executive functions. Here, if you are, offender here is a judge. Okay, it can be only committed by a judge. So if you are if you commit this crime, you usurp executive function. Bali kung may gusto brahon na executive nga within law man, and then you stop the performance of their functions, then you are committing a crime under this article. Then usurpation of judicial functions. If you are in the executive branch man, like for example, mayor ka, hindi ka pwede makapugong. Like for example, guys, kung ginakunahan mo, kayo like, pinagapangayo sang bulig kay mayor nga punggan kay ginapahalin na sila sa area. Di ba may desisyon na si judge. May desisyon si judge, separate na siya sa executive mo. So dapat ang imo yung istoryahon or ipagbato mo yung imo kinamatarong if you are a landowner. Ipagbato mo na siya in court. You don't ask a mayor to stop, for example, an order of the judge because the mayor is not above the judge. Hindi na sila sang same ladder. Kumbaga, si mayor yari diya sa executive ladder and then a judge is in another ladder. So no one is above, the judge is not above the mayor is not above the judge. So they have the different functions. So we don't ask the mayor to stop the execution of the judgment nga ginubra ni judge. That's obstruction. That's usurpation of judicial functions. So, iba nga hindi maka-understand, they just maakig sila, for instance, sa mayor, kay amo niyang decision sa mayor, hindi siya mangilabot. Because kung mangilabot di man siya, guys, he's committing a crime under this article. Article 242, disobeying request of disqualification. Mabenta man siya like for example, sa COMELEC, kung elections, mabenta man siya ang crime. Disobeying request of disqualification. Article 243, I'm just browsing guys, kay do mga malang ni siya, mga salda mo malang makita. dapat nyo gid yung atunan are crimes crimes against persons, which we will discuss sa module 6 kung mag-aray nakita sa module 6 na lectures. Unlawful appointments also. And like for example, appointing authority ka, you appoint a person to a public office nga wala man sang qualification. So, you know that the person lacks qualification pero gin-appoint mo man gyapon. That is unlawful appointments. Abuses against chastity. Like for example, you are amo na ginatawag na sa subong nga sexual harassment. So we have special law na diri. Some of these are all some of the articles under the RPC are already repealed by special law. Because sometimes special law nagapatong sa mas higher na penalty. So and it's more recent, kumbaga it's more comprehensive. Abuses against chastity, like for example, you are a public officer and you solicit or make any indecent or immoral advances to a woman. Tapos, may ara siya sang ginapangayo sa imo or ginapangayo bila. May ara siya sang request pending before your office. Like for example, request are interested in matters pending before your office under the custody of an officer who is a warden or other public officer directly charged with the care and custody of prisoners. Or for example, babae ang prisoner, and then you make advance on the female prisoner. So you're committing a crime under this article. Or di man gani, hindi man yun mismo ang prisoner, or hindi man yun mismo ang tao nga kinahanglan sa imo. Basi ang ginanhan mo sa advances are his wife, it's either wife niya, daughter niya, sister niya, or relative niya, within the same degree of affinity of a person with custody and charge of the offender. Okay, so that would be the end of our discussion for today. Thank you guys for staying with me nag 20 minutes. Ano kita? So, next time, start na ako sa module 6. Okay? So, ang attendance lang, aliyog lang. Do you have any question before I end the class?